They said it as a joke, but it didn't sound like one. Buy the horse, get the girl free. The crowd laughed, then went quiet when the white stallion raised his head and stared at me like he understood. My face burned. I wanted the ground to open. The stallion's eyes didn't move. He kept looking at me, calm and clear, as if he had a message. That look stayed with me on the wagon ride home, heavier than the whispers, heavier than the dust. The wheels creaked and my father held the reins without a word. I folded my hands and kept them still so he wouldn't see them shake. It was foolishness, he said at last. His voice was flat. People forgot their manners. I nodded, but the hurt sat under my ribs. They didn't forget, I said. They just felt safe to say it out loud. You watch the road. We get home, we eat, we sleep. Morning makes small of such things. I wanted to say the morning never made small of anything for me. Instead I asked, whose horse was that? He tightened the reins. Old Wit from the North pasture. Name Snowfire. Too proud for the sale ring. I almost smiled. He looked at me like he knew me. Father clicked his tongue at the mules. Horses looked at everyone. The wind dropped as we passed the east fence, the part of the ranch we never used. Snowfire, roped to the back, tossed his mane and stamped once. The sound was sharp, like a knock on a door we never opened. I turned. He stared at the old gate choked with dry vines. He let out a low sound and pulled against the rope. Leave him, Father said. He smelled coyote. I shook my head. There aren't any this close. The horse stamped again, eyes on me, not the brush. At supper the stew tasted like dust. I pushed the spoon around the bowl. You knew those boys, Father said. They were drunk on noise. I met his eyes. You were there. He didn't answer. The clock ticked. A fly tapped the window. I'll check the troughs, I said and stood. After dark, he asked. Won't take long. He watched me reach for the lantern. Stay by the house. I nodded, but my feet already knew where they would go. Outside, the night held its breath. Snowfire stood in the yard, untied, as if he had freed himself without a sound. He turned his head toward the east fence and took a slow step. I lifted the lantern. Show me, I whispered. He moved. I followed. Snowfire's hooves crunched over the dry earth, each step pulling me further from the house. The lantern swung in my hand, its glow catching the weeds that had taken the east fence. The closer we came, the quieter the night grew, as if even the crickets were holding their breath. My heart pressed against my chest. I had walked this ranch my whole life, but that path felt like foreign ground. The horse stopped at the crooked gate, vines tangled around its hinges. He tossed his head and snorted once, sharp and clear. I pushed at the gate. The rust cried out, a sound too loud for the silence around us. Beyond it stretched the forgotten pasture, the grass tall and silver under the moon. My voice shook. Why here? Snowfire stamped and turned his gaze toward the lone tree at the far end. Its branches bent low, heavy with years. Something about it looked expectant. I whispered to myself, this is foolishness. Still, I lifted my skirt and stepped through. The weeds clung to my boots. Every breath I took felt heavy, like the air itself had weight. Halfway across the field, I heard Father's voice faint in the distance. Maggie. Back here now. My feet slowed, but Snowfire pressed on. He didn't look back. At the tree, the bark was dark, worn smooth in places by hands long gone. My fingers brushed across it. Letters carved deep but almost lost to time caught the lantern light. LH plus WC. My stomach tightened. I knew those initials. My mother, Lillian Harper. My father, Wade Carter. But they had never spoken of carving this. Never once. Snowfire pawed the ground near the roots, dirt scattering. I knelt, brushing aside weeds, my fingers sinking into cool earth. Something hard met my touch. A wooden edge. My breath caught. What is this? I pulled and slowly a small box came free, its surface cracked, its lock rusted but weak. The lantern flame flickered as I worked it open. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, were folded letters bound with a ribbon. My hands trembled. The top page bore my mother's writing. I mouthed the words without sound. My dearest Will. I never stopped loving you. My body went cold. Oh, not Wade. Behind me, Father's shout broke the night again, closer now. Snowfire stayed still, his eyes on me, steady as stone. My lips parted, but no words came. The truth in my hands was heavier than the box itself. I closed it, clutching it to my chest. For the first time, I feared going back home. I walked back across the field with the box tight against me, the lantern swinging low. Father was waiting at the gate, his shoulders squared, his face hard to read in the dim light. What are you holding? His voice was calm, but too calm, the kind of tone he used when anger sat just beneath. I stopped a few steps short. "I found it under the tree," I said. My voice cracked, but I forced it steady. He didn't move. The horse stood between us, breathing slow, ears twitching like he understood every word. Father's jaw tightened. That ground was left alone for a reason. I pressed the box closer to my chest. "It belonged to her, didn't it? Mama hid this." His eyes flicked to the box, then back to me. "Some things buried ought to stay there." I shook my head. "Why?" "Because you didn't want me to know." The silence stretched so long I thought he would turn and leave. Finally he let out a slow breath. "You open it?" I nodded. I read the first line. "It wasn't to you. It was to someone named Will." The night seemed to shift. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time he looked old, not strong. "William Clayton," he said at last. The name fell heavy in the space between us. "Your mother's first love." My mouth went dry. "Then why did she marry you?" His gaze dropped to the dirt. "Because she thought she could let him go. Thought he was gone for good." I clutched the letters tighter. "And me? Where do I stand in all of this?" He lifted his eyes, weary, sharp with pain. "You're my daughter." His words were firm, but his voice wavered. I whispered, "By name, maybe?" He flinched just slightly, like the words hit their mark. "Blood doesn't make a family. Raising does." The air between us was thick. Snowfire shifted, letting out a low sound as if reminding us both to breathe. My hands trembled. "All those years you let me wonder why I never looked like you. Why I always felt different." He rubbed a hand over his face. "I thought love would cover it. Thought silence was kindness." His voice broke on the last word. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead I only asked, "Where is he now? This William?" Father looked past me toward the hills. "Alive maybe. Or not. But he's not part of this ranch. Not part of what we built." The box felt heavier than ever. I held it close and turned toward the house. "I need to know more," I said. My father's voice followed, soft and raw. "Then be ready. Knowing is heavier than not knowing." The house was dark when I stepped inside, the wooden box still pressed to my chest. I set the lantern down on the kitchen table, its light spilling over the cracked surface. Father came in behind me, slow, as though his boots carried more weight than before. He didn't sit. He just stood there, hands on his hips, staring at the box like it might open itself. I untied the ribbon with shaking fingers. The letters slid free, brittle from age. The handwriting was my mother's, soft curls, steady lines. I unfolded the first sheet and read aloud, my voice breaking halfway through. "My dearest Will, I never stopped loving you. Not the war, not the years, not even this marriage could make me forget." The words echoed in the room, each one striking harder than the last. I looked at Father. His jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on the letters. "You knew," I whispered. "All this time you knew." He finally sat down, lowering himself into the chair like an old man. "I found them after she passed. Buried them myself, thought it would keep the ghosts quiet." The lantern flame hissed faintly. My throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me? Why let me live believing?" My voice faltered. "Believing I was yours?" His hands rubbed across his face, rough and tired. "Because I wanted it to be true. Every day I woke up and told myself you were mine. I fed you, raised you, worked this land for you. What good would the truth have done?" Tears stung my eyes. "It would have given me the choice to know who I am." My voice shook, but I forced the words out. Instead I grew up thinking I was never enough. Thinking something in me was wrong. The silence cut sharp between us. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes glistening though he tried to hide it. "You were never wrong. You were just not mine by blood. But I loved you the only way I knew how, even if it was broken." The words hurt and soothed at the same time. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the box. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. "If William Clayton is out there, I need to know. I need to see him. I can't carry this weight without answers." Father's eyes met mine. For once he didn't argue. He only nodded slowly. "Then you'll need someone who remembers those days. Someone who knew him before the war." I swallowed hard. "Who?" He looked toward the church steeple faint in the distance. "Reverend Ellsworth." Before the sun had risen the next morning, I saddled Snowfire. The air was cool and damp, a soft mist clinging to the ground. My father stayed inside, his shadow moving behind the kitchen curtain but never coming to the door. I didn't tell him goodbye. I only whispered to the horse, "We're going to the church," and Snowfire flicked his ears as if he understood. The ride into town was longer than I remembered. Every hoofbeat seemed to echo my heartbeat. The letters were tucked under my arm, wrapped again in their faded cloth. The whole way there I tried to imagine the man behind those words, the man my mother had loved before my father. I wondered if he had my eyes or my voice, or if he had ever even known I existed. The church was quiet when I arrived. The steeple cast a long shadow over the garden out back where Reverend Ellsworth was bent over a row of beans, hands deep in the soil. His back straightened when he heard Snowfire's hooves. He squinted into the morning light, wiping his hands on his apron. "Maggie Ray," he said gently, his voice rough with age. "You look like a question walked into the sun." I dismounted slowly, the letters clutched to my chest. "Did my mother ever tell you who my real father was?" I asked. My voice cracked on the last word. The Reverend's eyes fell to the cloth bundle in my arms. He didn't reach for it. He just stared, and in that silence everything inside me went still. "She never told you?" he asked at last. His voice carried more sadness than surprise. I shook my head. I didn't even know his name until yesterday. I held out one of the letters, my fingers trembling. "William Clayton. Did you know him?" Reverend Ellsworth took the paper carefully, like it was a living thing. His eyes scanned the handwriting, then drifted back to mine. "Your mother loved William more than she ever let on. They were engaged before the war. Everyone thought he'd died. When he came back," the Reverend paused, his eyes darkening with memory. "He wasn't the same man, but he was alive. And she couldn't let him go completely, even after she married Wade." The words hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened. "And I'm his." It wasn't a question anymore. The Reverend's silence was answer enough. A soft wind moved through the garden, stirring the leaves. "I don't know who I am anymore," I whispered. My hands stayed curled at my sides. Reverend Ellsworth stepped closer, laying a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You're who you choose to be, Maggie Ray. Blood is only the start of the story. It's not the end." I nodded slowly, but the ache in my chest didn't ease. Behind me, Snowfire lifted his head, his calm gaze steady as if waiting for the next step. The road home stretched long and silent, but nothing about it felt familiar anymore. Snowfire's steady pace kept me from falling apart, his hooves beating a rhythm that gave me something to hold on to. I carried the letters pressed to my chest, as though letting go would erase the truth I had just heard. By the time I reached the ranch, the sun was high, burning the mist away. The house stood quiet against the horizon, but I no longer looked at it the same. Father was waiting on the porch. His arms were crossed, his face unreadable, shadowed beneath the beam. I slowed Snowfire, my hands trembling on the reins. He didn't ask where I had been, maybe he already knew. I slid from the saddle and stood at the bottom step, the letters still under my arm. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence pressed heavy, full of things that had been left unsaid for too many years. Finally I broke it. "You should have told me." My voice wasn't angry, it was tired, worn thin. He didn't look at me at first. His eyes followed the fields instead, the endless grass that had carried our family name. "Would it have changed anything?" he asked. "I fed you, raised you, protected you. I was your father every day of your life." I swallowed hard, the ache in my throat sharp. "That's true," I said quietly. "But you also let me believe a lie every day of my life." His hands tightened on the railing, the veins rising in his wrists. "I did it for her," he muttered. "And then I did it for you. I thought if I loved you hard enough, it would be enough to erase the rest." The words burned, but they rang true. I stepped closer, my voice softer. "But it didn't. You loved me like a duty, not like a daughter." His head dropped. For the first time I saw something break in him, not anger, not shame, but sorrow. The kind of sorrow a man carries for years without letting it out. He rubbed his face with one hand, and when he looked up again, his eyes were wet. "Maybe you're right," he whispered. "I didn't know how to love you without resenting the part of him in you. And I hate that about myself." I stood there, the words between us raw and fragile. My hands shook, but my voice steadied. "I'm not asking you to be perfect. But I needed the truth. I needed to know who I am. And I needed to hear it from you." The porch went still, save for the faint stir of dust at our feet. Father's lips parted, but no words came. Then slowly, almost like surrender, he nodded once. "Then let's talk about it," he said. "All of it." For the first time, I stepped inside that house not as the daughter who didn't belong, but as the young woman ready to claim her story, even if it hurt. The kitchen smelled of coffee gone cold, the kind father always brewed at dawn and left sitting. He poured 2 cups without asking, sliding one toward me across the worn table. The steam had already thinned, but I wrapped my hands around it anyway, needing the warmth. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the tick of the clock and the faint groan of the house settling around us. Finally, I asked, "Did she ever want to tell me?" My voice was barely above a whisper. Father's eyes stayed fixed on the cup in his hand. "She thought about it," he said. "I saw it in her face more times than I can count. But she was scared." He rubbed his thumb along the rim of his mug. "She worried what folks would say. Worried you'd love her less." I swallowed hard. Instead, I grew up wondering why I never felt enough. My throat tightened. I thought maybe I wasn't pretty enough, not strong enough, not worthy. He looked up sharply, pain flashing in his eyes. "You were never plain. Never unworthy. You were hers." His voice broke slightly. "That's what scared me most. Every time I looked at you, I saw the part of her that never belonged fully to me." Tears blurred my vision. "You mean you saw him?" He nodded once, slow. "Yes. And that was wrong of me. You paid for pain that wasn't yours." The words fell between us like stones. I turned the locket over in my hand, the tiny faces inside staring up at me, my mother, smiling soft, and William Clayton, the man I had never met. "Do you think he's still alive?" I asked. Father's eyes flicked to the window, the endless land stretching beyond. "I don't know. Maybe. If he is, he's an old man by now." The idea twisted inside me, part fear, part longing. "And if I want to find him?" My voice shook. Father leaned back, exhaling through his nose. "Then you go. But don't think it'll be simple. The past never is." The clock ticked louder, like it wanted to rush me. I closed the locket and set it gently on the table. "I just want to know the truth," I said. "Even if it breaks me." His gaze softened. "Then we take it one day at a time." For the first time, I saw no anger in his face, only sorrow wrapped in a quiet kind of love. Outside, the sky had turned gray, a storm pushing in across the fields. The sound of rain began tapping against the tin roof, slow at first, then steady. Father and I sat there, side by side, two people carrying the same secret but no longer alone with it. The rain kept falling through the night, steady and low, a sound that made the walls feel closer. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, my mother's letters came back to me. I lit the lamp and spread them out across the quilt, the faded ribbon still holding most together. Her words smelled faintly of cedar, her handwriting flowing with a softness I had never seen in her face. If things were different, I'd tell her the truth. But it would only break her. That line burned into me until I whispered it aloud. Tell her the truth. Who is her? I knew. I just didn't want to believe it. I stared at my reflection in the dark window. People had always said I didn't look like Wade Carter. "You've got your mama's eyes, but not much else from the Carters," Grandma used to say. Now I understood why. When morning came, I saddled Snowfire. The letters were tucked beneath my arm. Father didn't ask where I was going. He only stood at the porch, his jaw tight, his eyes too tired to argue. Snowfire's breath steamed in the cool air as if urging me forward. We rode toward the edge of town, toward the church again, but I didn't stop there. I guided Snowfire past the square, past the fields, toward the little white house with the garden out back. Reverend Ellsworth had told me what I needed, but questions still gnawed at me. I needed to hear it spoken plain, without the weight of scripture or pity. When I reached the house, the Reverend was trimming roses. He straightened, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Maggie Ray," he said softly. "Didn't think I'd see you so soon." I slid down from the saddle, gripping the folded letter in my hand. "I need you to say it." My voice trembled, but my eyes stayed on his. "Say it plain. Was William Clayton my father?" The Reverend looked at the paper, then at me. His silence stretched long, broken only by the rustle of leaves. Finally he nodded once, slow and heavy. "Yes." The world tilted beneath me. My legs felt weak. I clutched Snowfire's reins for balance. Tears pricked my eyes, but no sob came. Just the hollow echo of truth finally spoken aloud. The Reverend placed a hand on my shoulder. "Your blood may come from him, but your life was built here, with the man who raised you." I bit my lip until it hurt. "Then why do I feel like I don't belong anywhere?" He looked past me toward the fields glowing under the pale sun. "Because you're standing between two truths. But in time you'll learn you don't have to choose one. You carry both." Snowfire shifted behind me, ears forward, steady as stone. I stroked his mane, whispering, "I just don't know who I am anymore." The Reverend's voice softened. "Then start with this. You are not a mistake." The ride back felt longer than the way out. Every turn of Snowfire's stride carried the weight of that single word, *yes*. My chest was tight, but I didn't cry. The truth didn't break me like I feared. It hollowed me out instead, leaving a space I didn't know how to fill. By the time the ranch came into view, the clouds had thinned and the land shimmered with the damp of the morning rain. The house stood steady, but it no longer looked like the place I had always known. I dismounted slowly, my legs weak. Snowfire stayed close, his breath warm against my shoulder as if reminding me I wasn't alone. The front door creaked open before I reached it. Father stood there, his face hidden by the shadow of the porch beam. He didn't ask where I'd been. He just looked at me, then at the letters under my arm. I stopped at the steps, meeting his eyes. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to speak. "You should have told me," I said. My voice was steady, though my hands trembled. He let out a breath, long and low, like he'd been holding it for years. "Would it have mattered?" he asked. "Would knowing have changed the way I raised you? The nights I stayed up when you were sick? The mornings I worked this land for you?" I shook my head. "That's not what this is about. You gave me a life, but you also let me believe a lie. Every day." His hand tightened on the doorframe. "I did it for her," he said. "And then I did it for you. I thought if I loved you hard enough, it would wash out the truth. But it didn't," I whispered. "It only made the truth heavier." His eyes met mine then, weary and bare. "I didn't know how to love you without hating the part of him I saw in you. And I'm ashamed of that." The silence between us felt different this time. Not sharp, not cold. Just heavy like the ground before rain. I stepped closer, my voice soft. "I'm not asking you to erase him. I'm asking you to see me. All of me. Because I need to know who I am, and I need to hear it from you." For the first time, something in his face broke. Sorrow, not anger. He nodded once. "Then sit with me. Let's face it together." I climbed the steps and followed him inside. The house was the same, but I wasn't. Neither of us were. Something had shifted, and though the pain was still raw, it felt like the beginning of something truer. The days that followed moved slow, but not empty. Chores still needed doing. Feeding the hens, sweeping the porch, hauling water to the troughs. But each task carried a strange new weight, as if the ranch itself was waiting for me to choose what came next. Father and I spoke more than we had in years, though sometimes it was only a sentence at breakfast or a nod across the barn. The silence between us was no longer hiding something. It was cautious, fragile, as if we were both learning how to live with the truth instead of burying it. At night I returned to the letters. I read them one by one, tracing every curve of my mother's writing. They weren't just love letters. They were confessions of a heart that never let go. Each page left me further from the woman I thought I knew. One line lingered the most: "If things were different, I would tell her. But it would only break her." She had written it for me, and it cut deeper than anything. One morning I rode Snowfire out to the east pasture. The tree stood crooked, its bark scarred by initials and years of weather. I sat beneath it with a notebook in my lap. For the first time I began to write. Not poetry, not stories, just pieces of myself I hadn't let breathe before. Snowfire grazed nearby, lifting his head now and then to check on me, his steady presence grounding me. It was there, under that tree, that I heard the distant rumble of an engine. I shaded my eyes and saw dust rising on the long dirt road. A truck, old and pale blue, slowed near the gate and came to a stop. My heart tightened. Snowfire pricked his ears, standing alert. The driver stepped out, tall and thin, his hair silvered by years. He held his hat in both hands, twisting it nervously. His eyes, though weathered, were kind and achingly familiar. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "Are you Maggie?" His voice was rough but gentle. I rose slowly, my legs trembling. "Yes." He swallowed hard, the hat clutched against his chest. "My name is Clayton. William Clayton. And I believe," his words faltered, then steadied, "I may be your father." The air left my lungs. The world stood still. Behind me, Snowfire let out a slow, approving snort, as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. For a long moment I couldn't move. The wind tugged at my hair, the leaves of the old tree whispered above me, but everything else was still. The man standing at the gate, his jawline, the shape of his eyes, I recognized them without wanting to. I saw pieces of myself reflected back, and it shook me to my core. William Clayton didn't step closer. He stood there holding his hat as though he feared a wrong move might send me running. "I didn't come to take anything from you," he said quietly. "I just wanted to see you once before it's too late." My throat tightened. Why now? The words were sharper than I intended, but I couldn't stop them. Why not years ago, when I was a child wondering who I was? He lowered his eyes. "Because I thought staying away was the kinder thing. Your mother chose her life here with Wade. I told myself you'd be better off not knowing me. But when my wife passed last year, I found one of Lillian's old letters tucked in a Bible. After that, I couldn't keep away any longer. I gripped the notebook in my hands so tightly the edges bent. Snowfire stepped closer to me as if urging me not to crumble. You don't get to decide what's kinder, I said, my voice trembling. You left me to grow up feeling like a shadow in my own home. His face twisted with pain, but he didn't argue. He only nodded, accepting the weight of my words. I deserve that, he said. I won't ask forgiveness. I only ask for a chance to answer your questions if you'll let me. I studied him, the way his shoulders sloped, the way his hands shook slightly even as he held them steady at his sides. He wasn't a stranger, not entirely. He was the missing piece that had shaped my life without ever being there. Before I could speak, the crunch of boots on gravel pulled my attention. Father stood at the edge of the porch, his face unreadable, shadowed by the brim of his hat. He looked at William, then at me. The air between them was thick with a history I had only just uncovered. None of us moved. None of us spoke. The silence was louder than words. Then Father gave a small nod, curt but not unkind, and said, "If you're here, you might as well come in." And just like that, the man from the letters, the man from the locket, stepped toward the house that had carried his absence all my life. The three of us sat at the kitchen table, the same table where truths had already been spilled and could never be taken back. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the tick of the clock and the soft patter of rain still dripping from the eaves. Father poured coffee for each of us. His ritual even now. William wrapped his hands around the mug, though he didn't drink. His eyes stayed low, as if the wood grain in the table carried answers he had searched for all his life. "I don't know where to start," William said at last. His voice was rough, quieter than before. "Your mother and we had plans once. The war took them. Took me. When I came back, I was broken. I thought she had moved on, so I stayed away. But I never stopped carrying her in my heart." Father's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. His silence said more than words could. William turned his gaze to me, and for the first time, his eyes met mine without turning away. "When I learned about you, I thought stepping back was the only way to protect you. I thought Wade would raise you stronger than I could. But when my wife passed and I found Lillian's letter, I knew I couldn't die with the question still burning. Would you want to meet me?" My breath shook. "I don't know what I want," I admitted. "You've been a shadow in my life, and now you're here, flesh and blood. I can't decide what to feel." "You don't have to decide now," William said gently. "I'm not asking to be called father. I'm only asking for a chance to know you if you'll allow it." The words settled in the room, fragile and uncertain. Father leaned back, his eyes on me instead of William. "The choice is yours, Maggie. Always should have been." Tears pricked at my eyes, but they didn't fall. I looked from one man to the other, the one who raised me, flawed but steady, and the one whose blood ran through me, absent but still tied to me. For the first time, I realized I didn't have to choose one over the other. Both truths could live inside me even if they hurt. The silence eased, just slightly, like the storm outside had begun to move on. I wrapped my hands around my cup, letting its warmth steady me. "Then let's take it slow," I said. "One day at a time." Both men nodded, neither pushing, neither turning away. And in that fragile moment, I felt something new take root. Maybe not forgiveness yet, but the start of it. That evening, after William left the ranch with the promise he'd return if I wished, I found myself drawn back to the east pasture. The crooked tree stood against the twilight sky, a dark silhouette that had once hidden secrets but now seemed to guard something different, my truth. Snowfire followed without a rope, his steady steps keeping time with my own. I sat beneath the tree, the journal resting on my knees. For the first time, my words flowed without trembling. "I am not the mistake of someone else's silence." I paused, letting the sentence settle in my chest. The truth didn't crush me anymore, it shaped me. Snowfire grazed close by, lifting his head now and then as if listening. I smiled faintly and wrote another line. "I am Maggie Ray Carter, raised with calloused hands and quiet love." That name may not be the whole truth, but it is still mine. The wind moved gently through the grass, soft and forgiving. I thought of my mother, her hidden letters, her unfinished story. I thought of my father, Wade, the man who had raised me even while carrying his own sorrow. And I thought of William, the stranger who had given me half my blood but none of my childhood. 3 lives all tangled into mine. For years I had believed I was small, unseen, the ugly daughter no one wanted. But now, as the last light of day brushed the land in gold, I realized that wasn't true. My worth had never rested in their choices or their silence or even their love. It rested in the way I chose to carry myself forward. I closed the journal and leaned back against the tree. The sky above deepened into a wash of stars, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I breathed without heaviness. Snowfire came to stand beside me, his white coat glowing faintly in the moonlight. He lowered his head as if to say, "You were never alone. You only had to see it." The ranch would still hold its burdens and tomorrow might bring new questions, but I no longer feared them. The truth had found me and I had faced it. That was enough. Moral lesson: the weight of truth can break silence, but it doesn't have to break us. Family is not only the blood that shapes us, but also the love, even imperfect, that raises us. What defines us most is the choice to step into our own story with courage.